Hello everybody, I'm Sandy Moretta, one of the co-owner directors of the UK Alliance of Wedding Planners. I'm also a wedding planner myself and have run a small independent planning business for the last 15 years. Welcome to this training. So today I'm going to talk about the various different services that wedding planners offer, in the hope that you might think about which are the ones that will work best for you. Because although there are around, probably 7, 8, 9 different services that planners offer, I'm a great believer that if possible, we are all better choosing 2, 3, 4 of those services that we particularly focus on. Otherwise, our websites, our marketing and everything else can be quite confusing to clients. That doesn't necessarily mean that we don't offer other services if clients ask. It just means that our marketing and our websites are less confused and we can choose to offer those services if we wish. So what am I talking about? So first of all, I think it's important to say we're all different, and it's one of the great things that Bernadette, my co-director, and I see when we're training planners through the Alliance, that we have such an amazing eclectic mix of people come through our courses with such an eclectic set of backgrounds. It's just wonderful to see the different types of personality and background that go into and are coming into the UK wedding planning business. But I think it's good to kind of hang on to those differences. So for example, I'm a great believer that, I am very much one end of the wedding planning spectrum, and my end of that spectrum is I love the logistics, I love spreadsheets, I love sorting out, making sure all the transport's in the right place at the right time, and all of that side of things. The other end of the spectrum is my wonderful colleagues who are totally style and design led. Can I put a beautiful design together for my clients? Of course I can, that's what I do. But that is not my key skill. My key skill is all about the organisation, all about the clipboard, all about the spreadsheets, the logistics, etc. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. I will therefore attract the kind of people that are looking for my kind of planner, if you like. So keeping that in mind, what are the different services that people offer? So for example, I have colleagues who offer a design and styling only service. This is where they will take a brief from a client and come up with 3, 4, 5 different design boards, different sets of styling, which may or may not be taken on by the client. They may never touch the wedding. This particular service assumes that you're not going to plan or do the wedding yourself, but the client comes to you purely for styling ideas. And then if they pick something specific, one of your boards, or more likely a combination, you need to be sure that you can then show them where they can find those different accessories, chairs, linens, etc., etc. And a quick hint here, do try to make sure that the images that you put on those design boards can be found in the UK, because a lot of things that we find online are only available if they can be shipped from America, which not all clients have the budget for. So for me, this is something that I would never offer in a million years, because I don't see myself as a stylist. But for other colleagues, it's absolutely wonderful and it's great for clients. And yes, they might potentially upsell another service, perhaps on the day coordination or styling, perhaps partial planning. But one doesn't go into the meeting and into the service with that particularly in mind. It is a styling only service. So that might be something that is of interest to you. Sort of similarly is consultancy. So this is something that I offer. Again, this assumes from the outset that you will not actually be planning the wedding yourself, but rather offering bundles of hours or days of pure consultancy work for a particular client. So the kind of clients who might come to me for this service are people who are very keen to do their own planning. They're very organised, they've got the time, but because they've never actually planned a wedding before themselves, they just perhaps want some help for a day or even 2 or 3 hours, just to kind of kick off their planning, ensure that they haven't forgotten anything, possibly help put the budget together, allocate, whatever money they've got, helping them allocate it to the different elements, the flowers, the photography, the film, etc., etc. Again, sometimes one can upsell from that. Sometimes a client will decide that actually it's all a bit too much and they would rather have somebody do that for them. And sometimes not, and that's fine. You're earning anyway from that consultancy. I personally would never do less than 2 or 3 hours because I don't think it's really worth my time, because clearly there is some preparation before the meeting. But it's entirely up to you what you offer. Then is what we describe generally around the industry as either on-the-day coordination or on-the-day management. So this is where a client has done all of their planning themselves, they've found all of their own suppliers, venues, etc., and have just decided that actually they don't want to be, let's say, walking around with a diamond encrusted white clipboard on the day themselves, and frankly they don't want their mum or their bridesmaid doing that either, and that makes a lot of sense to me. So they come to us probably about a month before their wedding and say, right, okay, I'm looking for somebody to coordinate my day. What we can actually do for that client is relatively limited, and I would always be very clear with a client that we are following their instructions. We don't necessarily know the suppliers that they have hired, and therefore we don't know whether they will do what they have said they will on the day. Of course, one gets in touch with all of the suppliers beforehand, double checks the client's schedule, which they should already have put together themselves, and perhaps tweaks that. Perhaps they've not left long enough for their reception line, or they've miscalculated how long it takes for the band to set up and sound check, etc., etc. But that, you will be tweaking it rather than putting it together from the outset. And then, of course, on the day you are there with your clipboard to oversee all of the plans that the client has put in place and to work with the suppliers and the venue to make it happen. That can be a really good way of getting lots of weddings under your belt as a newer planner. Although it can be a little bit scary because you haven't recommended the suppliers, I have to say that I myself over the years have met some superb suppliers that way that I might never have met otherwise. So certainly worthwhile to do at the beginning. Then at the other end of the spectrum is what most of us want most of the time, which is what I would describe as full planning. So this is where we take a brief from a client, we have a consultation with them that might be about an hour and a half, we make lots and lots of notes and ask lots and lots of questions. Then we put together a proposal, and if the client wants to take us on, then we are into timeline and we are going to be recommending all of their venues, suppliers, etc. They make all the decisions, of course, but it is our job to read all the terms and conditions, make sure that all payments are made on time, introduce them to the suppliers, introduce suppliers to one another to make sure that everybody works well on the day. And then, of course, we are managing those suppliers and managing the entire day and breakdown and collection of any accessories, etc. afterwards. This is what most of us love to do most of the time. I am a self-confessed control freak, therefore it kind of goes with the job. So although we don't get to do this all of the time, most of us, it is what most of us would love to do. And then there's kind of everything in the middle. Some will say they'll have a final few weeks package, some will have what they might call a rescue remedy package, but all of them are in some way what I would describe as partial planning. So you're not doing just on the day, but you're not doing full planning either. This one can be quite difficult to price, although pricing is a different conversation. But it's really a question of working out, in the case of each client individually, how much you are actually doing for them. Because partial planning can be almost full planning, or it can be literally the last 4, 5, possibly 6 weeks. So you are picking up the reins at whatever point your client wants you to and taking over and then making sure that you've contacted everybody, and then from then on running it, if you like, as if it were full planning, although you won't have been recommending most of the suppliers, possibly just the last 2 or 3. And lastly, I would just mention venue searches. I'm not specifically going to talk about other supplier searches because that is really quite unusual these days. When I first started out, I would frequently get potential clients ring up and say, oh, I'm looking for a cake designer who does this sort of cake, or I'm looking for this style of photographer and I just can't find anybody in the Hertfordshire area, for example. You know, bless you Google, bless you the internet, that tends not to happen anymore because people can find those suppliers, and that's obviously a great thing. And there are lots of forums that people can chat to each other on, and therefore it's very rare that that would happen. Venue searching, however, is a bit different. And it's quite important with venue searching to understand that there are 2 completely different animals, if I can describe it like that. So there is the venue search that I would happily do without moving from my desk chair. So pure desk research. So somebody calls me up and says, right, you know, we're in America, we're looking to come over perhaps for a week in January. We'd like you to shortlist 3, 4, 5 venues who meet these 6, 7, 8 criteria. You know, maybe a manor house in the home counties, ideally south of London, but north would be okay. We need X number of guests to be able to stay there at a minimum, you know, and you may have a variety of other criteria, ideally beautiful grounds, etc. The desk research that I would do for that is very specifically one service. Doesn't take me a great deal of time, particularly as I've been going for a number of years. I'm really going to spend probably an hour, a couple of hours looking at my database and whittling down, you know, 3, 4, 5 venues who meet the criteria, and indeed, of course, phoning them to make sure that they are actually available on the couple's date. The flip side of that is, and again, this is often clients coming from abroad, where the client then wants you to perhaps spend a week driving them around the country, going to see these venues, speaking with the in-house coordinators, possibly even meeting with potential suppliers as well at that point, particularly if they're over from America, from Hong Kong, from wherever, for a week. You have then basically lost that week. Now, it's great, there's nothing wrong with that, and you are probably going to be doing full planning for them. But what you need to charge that couple for that service is very different to what you are charging for pure desk research, because you have, you know, you've got opportunity costs there. You can't do anything else. You can't take a phone call from another client. You are probably driving a lot of the time. You are totally with that client for the whole week. Anyway, that covers, I think, the main services that most of us, or, you know, we don't cover all of them, all of us, but between us we all cover. So have a think about what it is that, you know, works for you, what floats your boat. Are you very much on the styling side? Are you much more on the logistics side? And which sort of 2, 3, 4 services are you going to offer? If you're not following us on social media already, please do. We love to interact with people. Please use hashtag UKAWP, and then it is easier for us to find you. Thank you for listening.